I wanted to talk about hookup culture today because there's a lot of uncertainty in today's age as to romantic, dating, ethical kinds of things surrounding relationships and sex. And really, like, this idea of relationships and sex is a modern invention, right? Before it was either are you single or are you married, between, BC 4000 to like AD like 1940. There's really only two states that you really described yourself in, either single, bachelor, married, or married. Or if you're really in between that state, you're really in this very socially structured process known as courting, which is this ritual basically to get you from the single idea to marriage, but in this very, very structured fashion. People knew what the norms were, people knew how they were going to do it, and so there was little room for uncertainty in relationships. And now we've kind of live in an age where we've opened up to ambiguity, we've opened up to different kinds of relationships, and we've opened up to especially this idea of hookup culture. Okay, so hookup. What does a hookup mean? No one freaking knows. No one. Ask anyone, everyone's going to give you a completely different definition. Some people are going to say, oh, it's kissing. Some people are going to say, oh, it's just touching. Some people are going to say, no, it has to go all the way, has to be sex, blah, blah. I don't even really want to discuss like the entire spectrum of hooking up. All we know is that it's some kind of contact between, I wouldn't even go that far, because there's some guys who would say, oh yeah, I hooked up with that girl. And it's like, yeah, I talked with her for 5 minutes. I basically hooked up with her. No, I mean, but you can't even really say that, because some people are just trying to, pad their masculine credentials with their bros by saying they hooked up with this girl when they really had nowhere idea, nothing close to what other people were thinking would be hooking up. And then similarly, some girls would go to their girlfriend and say, oh yeah, I hooked up with that guy, as kind of a cover word for going to kind of as a euphemism for not wanting to explain how far they really went. So people can really, use the word hookup in all kinds of different ways, but basically the connotation around hookup signifies really two things. One, an interaction that exceeded just the bounds of platonic friendship, and two, that interaction is not meant to last. Okay, so in these days, we're quickly, ever since really the invention of the pill, when you could disassociate sex with pregnancy, you've begun, this culture shift has kind of erupted, kind of come about, where we have started to separate sex from the emotional intimacy attached to sex. Culturally, we like to think of relationships as one thing and sex as another thing. People's sexual lives can be very sexually active, but not in any kind of relationship or relationally a failure. On the other hand, people could be having no sex, but be in like a single committed relationship on the other hand. So we have these kind of two really opposing ends where we've kind of separated relationships and sex. And the idea of the hookup really stems from this separation, this dislocation, right? Because when you're hooking up with someone, you're not expecting any kind of commitment. You just want to have fun. You just want to have fun. You want that good feeling. You want the feeling of sex, of what sex can bring in terms of a pleasurable experience. And so that's kind of how we go about kind of describing hookup, and that's where it kind of comes from. So what are the implications of that, right? What are the implications of that kind of system? Well, let's say we all are human beings that can easily separate the emotional intimacy from sex. If we can easily do that, then yeah, maybe the hookup, I'm putting all kinds of religious ethics here aside, even though religious ethics speak very clearly on this issue. But even if I were talking in completely non-religious ethics, if a person could easily separate emotional intimacy from the sexual experience, then yeah, a hookup would probably be okay, would be just fine. If people want to have fun, they can have fun. as kind of an emotional intimacy, because you can kind of dislocate the emotional intimacy from it, and as long as no one gets hurt, it's okay, right? As long as no one gets hurt, right? Now here's the issue. The issue is that people often do get hurt in hookup relationships, in hookup kinds of relationships. We like to idealize that a hookup sexual experience or a hookup experience will come with no consequences, but oftentimes it really, really does come with consequences. And those consequences have been expressed in themselves in today's really movement. There's a big feminist movement, the hashtag Me Too movement right now, and a lot of it is response against men who have abused kind of the newfound powers that hookup culture has given them. Because what hookup culture is assuming, since you can untie emotional intimacy from sex, then it's liberating men to go out and basically satisfy all of their desires and whatever they want. Without any kind of code to constrict them, we arrive at the conclusion that really benefits and privileges men who, especially men who have no scruples going around and having sex with whoever they want. By having sex or having like sexual experiences with anyone that they want. And what we've learned is that there's this growing backlash against that kind of cultural fabric from women who see that this kind of sexual ethic has in fact taken us too far, because women are feeling regretful, they're feeling sorrowful, they're feeling sad, they don't trust men anymore. They see that a lot of the things that men kind of do to instigate the kind of hookup culture borderline assaultative. They see that the whole idea of hookup culture is really beginning to unravel. And so that what I see right now is this backlash is really exacerbating. You saw that there was this article that was posted by this woman named Grace against this actor Aziz Ansari, who she described in the article. She wasn't undergoing any kind of there wasn't any kind of rape or sexual assault that was going on inside this inside the story that she was describing, but she still called it the worst night of her life because of kind of the way that he led her on and the way that he kind of pushed her just ever so slightly into bounds that she didn't really want to be, but she didn't know how to escape. And I'm going to say that those experiences are real, because a lot of times people's communication can't be read through just words. And a lot of times men are so eager to go after the girl and to go after the sexual experience that they fail to really consider and to really parse out and to understand the needs of this girl. Now, obviously, this isn't any kind of legally actionable offense, and it shouldn't be any kind of legally actionable offense, but it does kind of speak to the failure of this consent-only hookup culture that we live in today. And it kind of drives us to ask this question, well, what kind of ethic then must replace hookup culture? And these are questions that I'll be exploring pretty soon. But what we do know is that #MeToo, the feminist backlash against men, the sexual assault problems that are going on, can be traced a lot of it can be traced to the philosophy of the hookup culture. Thank you.